So today we're going to be making some roti. We're starting with 2 cups of flour, pinch of salt, teaspoon baking powder, half a teaspoon of yeast,
Y'all better not fucking snitch on me.
1 tablespoon margarine, and I'm using the handle of a wooden spoon at this point to mix it because it works like the dough attachment on a mixer, and I don't like getting my hands like messy with the sticky dough. 1 cup warm water, and make sure you're scraping the sides. If it looks like it's a little too wet like this, you just add some more flour on top until it like starts to pull together. And it starts to like look like this. It still has to be a little bit sticky, but you don't want it too sticky. Make sure you get a paper towel and wet it and cover it for 15-30 minutes. Doesn't really matter like the increment, just as long as you leave it to rest. Flour your work surface and save the damp tissue because you're going to be using it after. My dough looks like this because I added a bit too much water. So this, you just use flour. You kind of just add the flour as you're taking it out of the bowl. Make sure you don't knead the dough. At no point should you be kneading the dough. Separate it into 4 equal parts. I'm just using my dough scraper to do this. It's really useful. And at this point, it doesn't matter if when you roll it, it doesn't come out like perfectly round, because after you make the loy, that's when it gets the actual shape that you're putting on the pan. So it doesn't really matter what shape you get it into at this point. Just make sure your surface is floured, your rolling pin is floured, and make sure it's not sticking. So you see mine is sticking a little bit. Just add more flour until it doesn't stick anymore, and just flip it like every couple rolls. So this part is where we're making the loy. You're going to be using how much was this? About a 1/4 cup of butter, or no, that would be like an 8. Just because you're using to make the loy, which is kind of the round part where it's like set in. Use a tablespoon of melted butter, margarine, whatever you want to use, and make sure you cover it. It doesn't have to be like perfect. Make a slit in one side, and then you kind of roll it into like, I guess like a rose. Yeah, that one got cut off because I got a phone call, so we're starting with the next one. But yeah, same process again. You roll it out. This after you wait like a couple minutes. Roll it out. Make sure it doesn't have to be completely flat. It just has to be even. Add a tablespoon of margarine, melted butter, whatever you're using. Make a slit in one side, and then you roll it. Make sure it's not too tight as you're rolling it. Then you pick up the end and you stick it into the top, and you keep sticking. You can see the exposed end. You keep sticking that in. If it starts sticking to your hand, you just flour your hands a little bit, and then you stick the bottom in. Then you put it back into the bowl with a damp paper towel and you cover it. Same thing with these two. I'm showing you how I'm making all of them because I'm not sure if I did any of them a little bit differently, but it might be easier to see like after you see it a couple times. And these two, because I'm not going to be using these like right now, so I'm going to store them. I'm going to show you how I store them. Same thing, a tablespoon of butter, margarine, whatever you're using. Make the slit in one side and roll. Pull the bottom and tuck it into the top, tuck all the ends in, and then tuck the part at the top in. If it's a bit too sticky, you just put some flour and roll it because you don't want it to stick into the container. Same thing with this. Make the slit, you roll it. It doesn't have to be perfect, like as long as you make the loy, it's gonna be round once you roll it out. So I usually store my roti in like a plastic container. So you want something that would fit the loy, however many you store in, and you don't want them too crowded, because then they would stick. You make sure you get another damp paper towel to put on top, whatever size would fit in the bowl, and you make sure both of them are covered with the damp paper towel, because you don't want them drying out. And you cover and store it. And it keeps really well in the fridge for a couple days. Just make sure you take it out like half an hour before you want to use it. So it has time to like get back to room temperature. And this is how I use my dough scraper to clean up the surface. It's super easy. Then you wait another 15 to 30 minutes. Put on your tower to heat. Put it on like medium high. But before you put the roti on, you turn it down to medium. So flour your work surface again. This is the loy. I'm just using one of them because I was just making one of them. You get it out to the container, the bowl, wherever you're keeping it in. And same thing, make sure work surface is floured. Make sure you're building the flour. Roll it out. And at this point, it's fairly hard to get it out to the circle shape once you get that part like good. And you just keep rolling until it's like as flat as possible. But make sure you check the size of your pan. You don't want to make it too big, but you also don't want to make it too thick. For the base, you can use melted butter again, margarine, but I like using a mixture of oil, whatever cooking oil I'm using, and melted butter. That works really well for me, I think. But it depends on what you want to use, because I think technically you're supposed to be using ghee, but I still don't know what ghee is, so I just use butter. Good. So the reason you heat the tower before you start rolling it out is that by the time you're finished rolling it out, the tower is going to be hot, so you don't have to wait again. And you just put onto the tower. It doesn't have to go on perfect. You just fix it. But if you put the tower onto heat first, it wouldn't stick. You just wait a couple seconds and then you flip it. So you just take a tablespoon of whatever fat you're using. It doesn't have to be completely covered, but you also don't want to saturate it too much with fat because you want it to be kind of dry. And wait until you start seeing the bubbles, or it might like swell completely, and then you flip it and do the same thing on the other side. So 1 tablespoon, whatever fat you're using, cover it. It doesn't have to be like completely covered because you don't want it too oily. And you see this one's swelling already. And you can use a spatula, it's fine. Especially at this point, once you add the oil, it's super hot. So each side gets 1 tablespoon of fat, whatever fat you're using. But each side kind of has a toast before you put the fat on. And then after that, after you put the fat on, each side has to be on the heat for a little bit. I hate clapping roti, so I just put mine into a mug and give it a couple shakes, and that's it.